My name is Jennifer Hayes. I'm 35, an interior designer who built her own career in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a quiet Tuesday night when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother that froze me in place. Dawn set call or come over. We set or done. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry or plead. I simply replied, got it. That was all. Years of supporting my family, covering my mom's medical bills, clearing my brother's debts, and keeping their restaurant alive were erased in a single message. I'd always been the outsider, the one who chose design instead of the family business, the one who never quite fit their mold. But that text drew a clear line. I wasn't going to chase after them again. By midnight, my phone was overflowing with missed calls, voicemails, and messages. Mom's number flashed over and over, followed by my dad's and my brother's. They were clearly panicking, and I could already guess why. I had been their safety net for years, and now I was done. What happened after that message completely changed how I saw my family. Stay with me to hear how everything fell apart. If you've ever felt pushed out by your family, hit that like button, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for the rest of this journey. Growing up in Tulsa, we looked like the picture of the American dream. My dad owned a chain of restaurants, a self-made man who grew one small diner into a local success story. My mom had left her banking career to manage the home and balance out his sharp edges. My younger brother, Brandon, was the golden child, destined to take over the family legacy. And then there was me, Jennifer Hayes, the one who dreamed in colors and floor plans instead of recipes and profit margins. Dad made his expectations clear early on. The restaurants are our future, he set say at dinner, his tone leaving no room for argument. You still learn the business, Jennifer. But I wasn't drawn to cooking or accounting. I wanted to design interiors, spaces where people felt alive. By high school, I was sketching layouts in my notebooks and picturing cozy homes and modern offices. When I told Dad I wanted to study interior design, he laughed. That's a hobby, not a career, he said sharply. Mom stayed silent, her eyes shifting away, already siding with him. At 17, I got accepted into a top art school in Chicago. I was thrilled until Dad crushed it. If you're not joining the restaurants, you're on your own, he said flatly. No tuition, no help. Mom nodded quietly beside him, and Brandon, only 13, smirked like he'd won. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Their favoritism toward him was already obvious. I worked 2 jobs through college, waitressing and tutoring, to cover what scholarships didn't. Late nights, endless shifts, and student loans got me through. Dad never asked how I managed. Mom's rare, "I'm proud of you," felt empty when she'd turn around and praise Brandon for the smallest effort. One Christmas, Brandon forgot to lock a restaurant, and a break-in cost thousands. Dad brushed it off. He's learning, he said. Yet when I missed one family dinner to finish a design project, I got a full lecture. The gap between us widened. Dad was fixated on Brandon, the heir apparent, no matter how little he cared. Mom followed his lead. I tried to stay close, calling often, sharing my sketches, but she was distracted. Brandon's helping at the restaurant, she'd say proudly. I wanted to ask, what about me? But I stayed quiet, hoping one day they'd see my worth. By the time I graduated, the distance was permanent. I built a name for myself in Tulsa, designing boutique hotels and luxury homes. But at family gatherings, it was always about the restaurants. When are you joining us? Dad would ask, as if my career didn't matter. Brandon would joke about my fancy drawings, and Mom would smile, never stepping in. Their favoritism was no longer subtle. It was a wall I could never break through. I kept trying, working harder to prove myself, but the truth was clear. They had chosen Brandon. I was just the backup plan. After art school, I devoted everything to my design career. Chicago had taught me to think big, to create spaces that told stories. Back in Tulsa, I started small, redesigning local cafes and turning dull diners into warm, inviting spaces. At 27, I got my big break when a boutique hotel chain hired me to redesign their lobbies. My clean, modern style gained attention fast. Soon I was signing contracts with upscale clients, and by 30, I'd become one of Tulsa's top interior designers. But at home, nothing had changed. 5 years ago, Mom became seriously ill. Treatment costs were enormous, and the restaurants were struggling. I didn't hesitate. I paid for her hospital bills, medications, and specialist visits. Dad said, "We'll pay you back," but I knew better. Mom texted, "Thank you, Jennifer," and that was it. No call, no real gratitude. I told myself it didn't matter. It was for her health, not their approval. Then came Brandon. He'd started a food truck business that failed quickly, leaving him deep in debt. One night, Dad called. "Brandon needs help," he said, like it was my duty. I sent $30,000 to clear his debts and another $20,000 to keep their restaurants afloat. Brandon never thanked me. At a family barbecue, he even bragged about turning things around himself. Dad clapped him on the back, proud. I stood there invisible. I kept giving, paying for new restaurant equipment, funding Mom's treatments in Dallas, covering travel and consultations. Every time, I hoped they'd finally see me. But at family dinners, it was always about Brandon's progress or Dad's expansion plans. Once, I showed Mom a magazine feature about my hotel projects. She barely glanced at it. "That sip's nice," she said. "But Brandon sip's working so hard." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. Dad only called when they needed money. "The restaurant's short this month," he'd say, and I'd send more. I had become their ATM. Brandon acted entitled, saying, "You're doing well, why not help out?" as if I owed it to them. Looking back, I realize how naive I was, thinking money could buy respect. Every dollar I sent was me trying to earn a place in their world, but they took everything, hundreds of thousands, and gave nothing back. 5 years into my career, I finally had my own dream, a sustainable design firm focused on eco-friendly materials for hotels and restaurants. I had data, projections, and a strong business plan. For once, I thought my family might believe in me. I invited them to a meeting at our home. Dad sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. Mom hovered nearby, avoiding eye contact. Brandon scrolled on his phone, and his wife, Tara, offered me a polite smile. I began confidently, explaining how sustainable design could reduce costs and attract new clients. "This could put Tulsa on the map," I said. "I stimmed asking for a $200,000 investment. You still get it back, with interest." Dad didn't let me finish. "A pipe dream," he said flatly. "Hotels don't care about recycled wood. They want cheap, not experiments." Brandon snorted. "Sounds like a waste of money. Why don't you stick to decorating houses?" I clenched my hands under the table, forcing composure. I'd spent months preparing this, and they dismissed it without a thought. I turned to Mom. "You've seen my work. You know I can do this." She hesitated, then said softly, "It sounds risky, Jennifer. The restaurants are what we know." Those words hit harder than Dad's criticism. I'd paid for her treatments, kept their business alive, and still wasn't enough. Tara spoke up quietly. "I think it's innovative. Sustainability matters now." But Brandon shot her a look, and she fell silent. Dad waved a hand. "We are not investing. Brandon sep's opening a new location. That sep's our focus." Brandon smirked, triumphant. "This isn't set a handout," I said firmly. "It sets an investment with real returns." Dad shook his head. "You chose your path. The family business comes first." Brandon added, "Maybe if you helped with the restaurants, we take you seriously." My throat tightened. I'd given them everything, money, time, support, and they still saw me as the rebellious daughter who didn't fit in. I packed my laptop, my hands trembling. Tara mouthed, "I'm sorry, but it didn't help." That night, driving home, I replayed their words. Their rejection wasn't about business, it was about me. They didn't believe in me, and that truth cut deeper than I wanted to admit. What I didn't know then was that this moment, the one that shattered my last hope, was only the beginning of the end. One evening, after a family dinner, I overheard something I was never meant to hear. The table had just been cleared, and I stepped into the kitchen to grab my jacket, ready to head home. Tara lingered near the sink, nervously twisting a dish towel in her hands. She glanced toward the dining room, then leaned in close and whispered, "Jennifer, there's something you should know." Her eyes flicked back toward Dad and Brandon, who were deep in conversation. "Brandon Sepp's been taking money from the restaurants. Thousands," she said quietly. "That Sepp's why they Sepp's are struggling." My stomach sank. I knew the business had problems, but I Sepped assumed it was mismanagement or bad luck. Tara Sepp's voice trembled as she continued. "He Sepp's been skimming for years. I found receipts, hidden accounts. He Sepp's been lying to your parents." I froze, trying to absorb her words. Tara looked terrified, like she had just betrayed her husband. Before I could respond, Dad's voice rose from the next room. I moved closer to the doorway, staying out of sight. "We need to finalize the will," he said, his tone firm. "Brandon Sepp's the only one keeping this family together. Jennifer Sepp's off doing her own thing. She doesn't care about us." My chest tightened. I heard Mom murmur something, soft, uncertain. "Then she Sepp's done so much for us, Stephen." Dad cut her off. "Money isn't Sepp loyalty. Brandon Sepp's our legacy. The restaurants go to him." It felt like the air had been punched out of me. They were cutting me out, erasing me after everything I'd done for them. I slipped quietly out the back door, my thoughts racing. All those years paying Mom's hospital bills, rescuing Brandon from debt, keeping their business alive, and they still saw me as disloyal. Driving home, Tara's confession and Dad's words replayed in my mind. Brandon's theft explained so much. The constant shortages, the unpaid bills I'd covered. Yet they were rewarding him, not holding him accountable. The betrayal stung deeply, but I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Don't spet call or come over. We stetter done." My hands shook as I read the words. This wasn't about business anymore. It was personal. Mom, the one I'd thought was still in my corner, was shutting me out completely. I typed 2 words, "Got it." Then I hit send. My finger hovered over the call button, but I stopped myself. No more chasing, no more begging for acceptance. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled every recurring payment. Mom's medical bills, Brandon's debt payments, and the restaurant expenses. In total, I'd spent over $300,000 supporting them. Cutting those ties felt like lifting a weight I'd carried for years. But it also hurt. I wasn't just cutting off money. I was letting go of the hope they'd ever value me. As the confirmation emails rolled in, I sat back, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. Tara's words echoed in my head. Brandon's theft, hidden for years. Had Mom and Dad known? Had they covered for him? Either way, they'd chosen their side. I thought about calling Tara for more details, but didn't. She had already risked enough, and I didn't know if I could trust her loyalty. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Mom's text. "We're done." It wasn't just a message. It was a declaration. But I wasn't that same girl who used to chase their approval. I'd built my own life, and now I would protect it. Their betrayal had sparked something in me, and I wasn't going to let it break me. By midnight, my phone was lighting up with calls and messages. Mom's name appeared first, then Brandon's, Then Dad's. They must have realized what I'd done. Cut off the money. Brandon Sepp's voicemail came first, his tone full of venom. You think you can just walk away, Jennifer? You stare selfish, leaving us like this. Selfish? I almost laughed. I'd spent years cleaning up his messes, and now I was the selfish one? His next message was darker. You still regret this. We still take legal action if we have to. I deleted it calmly. Legal action for what? For saving them for years. Mom's texts came next, filled with guilt and emotional manipulation. How could you do this to me? One read. After everything I've been through, you stir abandoning your own mother. Another said, I raised you better than this. Her words cut deep, but I saw them for what they were, an attempt to pull me back in. I didn't reply. Then came Dad Sepp's voicemail around 1 a.m. His voice boomed through the speaker. Jennifer, you need to fix this. The restaurants can survive without your help. You owe us that much. Owe them? After giving them $300,000 in years of my life? I saved that message, not out of guilt, but as a reminder of who they were. The next morning, the barrage continued. Brandon texted, You're tearing this family apart. This is on you. I could almost see him pacing, blaming everyone but himself. Tara called once, but didn't leave a message. She was probably caught in the middle, afraid to speak up again. Later, Mom left a softer voicemail. Jennifer, please. We set your family. You can just turn your back on us. But I remembered her text. We're done. Family doesn't write you off like that. Dad called again that afternoon. I answered, hoping for a real conversation. Instead, he started right in. You still putting your mother's health at risk. Her treatments are expensive, and the restaurants are bleeding. You need to step up. Not a word about Brandon's theft. Or the will. Just more demands. I stepped up for years. Dad, I said, keeping my voice calm. I said, I'm done. He hesitated, then said, You still change your mind when you see what this does to us. I hung up, my decision firm. The messages kept coming, angry, desperate, manipulative. But I didn't waver. Brandon threatened to expose me. Mom tried to remind me of our past, writing, Remember when I helped you with your first sketches? I said I've always been there for you. But she hadn't not when I needed her most. Each call, each text, was just another attempt to pull me back into their chaos. But I finally saw it clearly. They didn't want me. They wanted what I could give them. No more. I checked my bank app one last time. All payments canceled. No more covering medical bills, debts, or restaurant losses. I'd spent years trying to earn their respect. But what they offered wasn't respect. It was control. And I was done giving it. By week's end, the panic on their end had only grown. Their messages piled up. Angry, pleading, even threatening. But I didn't respond. My silence was my answer. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was Jennifer Hayes, and I was done being their backup plan. A week later, I agreed to meet them at a cafe in Tulsa. Not to reconcile, but to close that chapter for good. The moment I walked in, I saw them, Dad, Mom, and Brandon, sitting at a corner table. Tara wasn't there. She'd texted earlier, apologizing, saying she couldn't handle the tension. I sat down calmly. I wasn't the same woman who once begged for their approval. I sold my sustainable design project. I began evenly. A national firm bought it for $1 million. Their eyes widened, but I continued. I built that from scratch, without your help, despite all your doubts. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom looked down. Brandon shifted uneasily. I gave you everything, I said. Money, time, trust, and you threw it away. You chose Brandon, even after he stole from you. Brandon snapped. You still lying. You still just jealous. I met his glare. The receipts don't lie, Brandon. I know what you did. Mom covered her mouth in shock, but stayed silent. Dad spits, voice hardened. You don't get to judge us. You walked away from the family business. I let out a quiet laugh. I walked away because you pushed me out. You cut me from your will. You called me disloyal. Mom tried again, her tone soft and pleading. Jennifer, we set your family. You can turn your back on us. I met her eyes steadily. You turned your back first, Mom. That text set why. The set redun sect was your choice. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't set bend. I stepped done being your safety net. I said firmly, I deserve respect, not manipulation. If you can give that, we or finished. Brandon scoffed. You think you stir better than us? You stir'll come crawling back. I stood. No, Brandon. I won sit. The chair scraped against the floor as I turned to leave. This is it, I said quietly. No more money, no more calls, no more chances. Dad Sip's voice followed me. You still regret this, Jennifer? I didn't respond. I walked out, the cafe door closing behind me. My heart was heavy, but free. A year later, I heard what happened. The restaurants went bankrupt without my support. Brandon faced lawsuits when his hidden accounts were exposed. Mom and Dad withdrew from everyone, their reputation in ruins. Tara left Brandon and started over elsewhere. I didn't reach out. That chapter was over. I poured my focus into my design firm. The sale had allowed me to expand, hire a team, take on international clients, and finally create the life I wanted. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, built on my terms. The pain of their betrayal lingered, but it no longer controlled me. Looking back, I realized something powerful. Respect begins with yourself. For years I thought I had to earn their love through sacrifice, but no amount of money could change how they saw me. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was survival. It taught me to walk away from people who refuse to value you. So if you're listening to this and facing something similar, remember this family should lift you up, not tear you down. You have the right to let go. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but it's the truth. Have you ever had to set boundaries with your own family? Share your story in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and I'm grateful for every one of you who's here.